Well, that is the Prime Minister's address to the nation. 19 minutes, the Prime Minister talking about the GST regime. Remember, the rate cuts come into effect on the 22nd of September. That's tomorrow. This also coincides with the start of the Navratri period, as the Prime Minister said, exhorting consumers to go out there and buy. Also telling consumers to buy Make in India, the emphasis there on both self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, as well as Swadeshi. Also pointing out to people that between the income tax cuts announced in the budget and the GST cuts now announced by the government, that there is going to be enough in the pockets of consumers to buy, travel, and so on and so forth. At least that's the hope and the expectation that the government has. The Prime Minister leaving us with a number in terms of savings, according to the government's estimate of 2.5 lakh crores. That is the number that the Prime Minister left us with, but essentially a reiteration of what we've heard from the Prime Minister himself and what we've heard from many within government, including several cabinet ministers and, of course, policymakers on how the GST rate cuts should help provide a fillip to consumption. Remember, consumption has been the big focus area through the budget. Prior to that, it was investment, it was capex, and we've seen that shift started with this budget, and that's been carried forward through the rate cuts with the GST. So the GST regime, for those of you who may have missed it, it's 5, 18 and 40%. 40% are select items, sin goods, demerit goods, and of course some luxury items. But a bulk of the products find themselves now in the two brackets of 5, 18, and of course then 40%. But let's bring in our guests now this Sunday evening for a quick reaction on what we heard there from the Prime Minister. Mr. Shah, many thanks for joining us. As I pointed out, a reiteration in many ways of what we've already heard from the government. The expectation that the GST cuts will accelerate growth and provide that much needed consumption boost. Monday is here, sir. 22nd of September is here. What's the sense that you get? Because we've also seen the government make some relaxation, saying you don't need to go in for new packaging, you don't need to go in for re-stickering and so on and so forth to ease the compliance burden, so to speak.
Well, good evening to you, Shireen. Yes, indeed, the PM had explained, and the nuances of GST took us through how from 2014 onwards this reform has been in place, spelled out all the various benefits, all well known, but re-emphasized again by the PM, and more importantly, the expectations that the industry will pass on the benefits to the consumers. The fact that the government is serious has also been clearly brought out in the relaxations which they have announced thereafter in very many of the processes and procedures. So, and the industries thus far, at least from the public advertisements we are seeing, has indeed risen to the task of trying to ensure benefits are being passed on. So hopefully all this will translate in better consumption, increased demand, and increased revenue both for the center and the states.
Let me bring in Saurabh into the conversation as well. Saurabh, as we pointed out, a reiteration really of what we've heard from the government so far. Monday is here. Several industries have, of course, made representations to the government, insurance, the car manufacturers, and so on and so forth, specifically on the issue of ITC benefits being taken away or being done away with for cars, specifically on the cess component. But outside of that, what's your sense? Industry ready to move forward?
So, Shireen, 2 points. I did a rough calculation. The spending, if you take an example of a common man who earns 50,000 rupees per month and spends 25,000 rupees on the consumables, which is food, personal care items, etc., out of which, out of that 25,000 bucket, around 15,000 rupees are the ones where the rate cuts have happened, which means that around 1,275 rupees will be a saving in the hands of the common man, which is around 2.55% of his total disposable income on a monthly basis, which is a big change and which will boost the consumption. Now, from an industry perspective, I think industry is all geared up. I think what we can see is, and when I talk to my clients, they are all geared up to make changes in the ERP systems. They are computing the pricing, they are publishing it in the advertisements, and ensuring that the trust which the government has put on the industry to pass on the benefits which are on account of the rate cuts, they get passed on from tomorrow itself.
Yes, that is the expectation. In fact, some companies, including companies like Mahindra & Mahindra, announced their price cuts earlier, and they came into effect also before the 22nd of September. But let me get Vijay into the conversation representing FICCI. Vijay, many thanks for joining us. FICCI has also done a study on the impact of the GST rate cuts. You want to run us through what the expectation is, what the estimates are that FICCI is working with, and I would imagine that this is a collation of the feedback that you've got from your own membership.
Thanks, Shireen, for having me. And yes, FICCI has done a study, and we're also quite bullish on this, on the announcements by the Prime Minister today. I think the focus, more than the immediate pass-through of the benefits to the consumers, which as Mr. Shah and Mr. Agarwal explained, I think the Prime Minister also hinted at what he expects to be the impact on industry in terms of, not just passing on the benefit to the consumer, but also looking ahead, looking at further investments. He spoke a whole range of issues, including the compliance burden on companies and consumers becoming easier. But I think there is an underlying message to industry asking us to focus on self-reliance and Atmanirbhar Bharat, which has been an underlying theme, focus of the government over the last 2 years. I think that message does come through in the speech of the Prime Minister, and we're quite excited at this, the fact that he's taken out time to deliver this message, not just to the consumers, but also to industry, Shireen.
Well, yes, the emphasis on self-reliance and, of course, Swadeshi being made there in the speech by the Prime Minister. But Mr. Shah, let me come back to you, and I want to take you back 8 years to when the GST first rolled out. And I would imagine the CBIC is going to be busy. We are given to understand that the field formations are going to be all out monitoring what's happening on the ground. From a administration point of view, Mr. Shah, how do you believe this is likely to play out to ensure that the rate cuts are passed on and so on and so forth?
Well, we do not have anti-profiteering authority in place. But having said that, I think various line ministries have passed on the message firmly to the industry at large to ensure that cuts are passed on, benefits are passed on. Similarly, the CBIC, I understand, has issued instructions to the field formations to monitor the prices. The idea being clearly that we would expect the benefits to be passed on. And as has been brought out by co-panelists, the industry is indeed likely to pass on the benefits. Clearly, there's a lot of trust reposed on them, which I'm sure they'll rise up to the occasion. You mentioned about the FICCI study. The FICCI study I have seen clearly also brings this out, that consumption is likely to increase because of the decrease in taxation, and benefits will be passed on. Processes, I think you also referred to the ITC issues. I think these are issues that will get addressed as and when you go forward. The government would like to see how it all pans out. And given the tone and tenor of the reforms, I'm sure these issues also will get sorted out.
Yes, that certainly is the hope and the expectation. But Saurabh, coming back to you now on the near-term impact, and that's what the government is going to hope for, that this is a much better festive season than the last year. We're also dealing with a fairly difficult, challenging and volatile global environment. And, we've seen everything that's going on as far as the US is concerned, especially overnight with the H-1B visa issue. How much of that is likely to weigh on sentiment? It may not necessarily have a significant material impact, but from a sentiment point of view, do you think that could weigh on consumers?
Shireen, I still remember when the announcement happened on 15th August, I was on your channel and I made a point that due to the global tensions, there was a thought that the GDP should come down by 0.5%. And I said that this rate rationalization will help in mitigating the impact on GDP. And there have been reports thereafter saying that around 0.5% will be an increase in GDP on account of this particular rate rationalization, as there will be more money in the hands of consumer, which will increase the consumption of the aspirational Indians, more on consumer appliances side, more on the automotive industry. And automotive has contributed very significantly to our manufacturing GDP as well as to our total GDP. Now, if you look at the way the global tariffs things are panning up. Likely there should be some resolution between India and US, and of course that will also bring down the impact as far as the GDP is concerned, and overall whatever numbers we have been targeting should be we should be able to achieve them. I think the important message which is coming from the Prime Minister, and I heard my panelists also saying, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat was the start, and thereafter the focus of the government is around Bharat Par Nirbhar. It is important to see that the government has rolled out various PLI schemes in the past and have given at least around 3 lakh crores to the industry, which will get rolled out over 3-4 years period now, which means that the impact will be there. And I personally feel that overall our economy will get insulated to some extent due to this rate rationalization.
Yes, that is the hope, that it will offset some of that. But Vijay, coming back to what next now, the expectation is that at least as far as the exporters are concerned, the MSMEs are concerned, there could be something that the government puts together, which is what we've heard from both the finance minister and other officials. What is on the FICCI wish list at this point in time from your perspective to be able to mitigate some of the global challenges?
So, Shireen, I think FICCI has represented to the government, and I think the finance minister has already addressed, like you said, this issue of the exporters, and she was very firm in her statements when she said she will not allow the exporters to suffer in the short run. I think, as Mr. Agarwal said, in our FICCI's perception, this is a short-term issue, and we're confident the government will resolve the issues with the US in the medium to long term. But I think we're very heartened by the fact that the finance minister and the RBI have made statements that they will address the concerns of the exporters who are facing pain in the short run. I think that is the key message from FICCI and from all our members, and we're very happy that the government has taken this on board, and we're very confident we'll see something fairly quickly in terms of alleviating the pains of the exporters, especially in the shrimp and the textile sector at the earliest.
Mr. Shah, where do you believe we're likely to see the biggest sort of bump up? Because auto, for instance, the cut is significant, down from 28% for two-wheelers to 18%, even for cars, at least small cars, down to 18%. That was a sector that was in pain. And of course, for larger vehicles and larger engine capacities, it's 40%, but there's no cess. Which sectors do you believe, like the auto sector, perhaps would be the biggest beneficiaries of the cuts announced?
Auto sector, like you rightly mentioned, and cement in construction industry. I think that's a huge benefit which will flow, because it in turn spins off multiple other subsidiaries and supplementary industries. So I think the cement industry's reduction, or rather the cement's reduction in the slabs, will ensure the cement industry and the construction industry, which in turn would mean services, manufacturing across the board, will all benefit. I think that is a huge takeaway, and I expect that to spur the economy considerably. Consumption goods, of course, multiple items are there. They will all also be significant in the manner in which revenue will shoot up because of the consumption increase. But I think as a single item, I would rate cement as the biggest beneficiary.
Yes, Vijay, I want to come back to this Swadeshi and Atmanirbhar commentary that came in from the Prime Minister. It's made in India. It's not necessarily made by Indians or Indian companies, I would imagine, because you've got the likes of Apple, Samsung, HUL, Nestle. I mean, these are companies operating in India, giving jobs to Indian consumers. At the messaging, I would imagine, would also want from the government will be that, look, we want to draw in investment, domestic as well as foreign. So made in India should be read as Swadeshi, not necessarily made by Indians.
I agree with you, Shireen. If you remember, the Prime Minister had earlier also spoken about Atma Samman Hi Atmanirbharta Hai. And I think this self-reliance is, you're absolutely right, not for Indian-owned companies necessarily, but for companies that are producing in India, taking advantage of all these reforms that have been put in place by the government, including these GST reforms. and increasing their FDI into our country. We are, after all, Shireen, the fastest growing large market in the world, and nothing has changed in the last 2 months. We continue to remain the fastest growing large market in the world. I think most companies will see through the recent challenges and are thinking for the medium and long term, whether they be Indian companies or multinational companies. You have heard of so many foreign companies, like you rightly mentioned, Apple and Foxconn and many of their other ancillary companies who have already taken steps to invest, including the state where I come from, Tamil Nadu, and they haven't reversed those decisions. If anything, from what we see on the ground, those decisions are only being accentuated and I guess further increased with the sort of reform thrust by the government.
Well, gentlemen, we will leave you on this Sunday evening. We appreciate you joining us here to take us through what you made of the comments that came in from the Prime Minister, Mr. Shah, Saurabh Agarwal, and Vijay. Many thanks for joining us. That's it on this special broadcast. We heard there from the Prime Minister addressing the nation, essentially reiterating the government's messaging on the new GST regime, which kicks in tomorrow, saying it's an auspicious time. You've got a double bonanza. You've got rate cuts in the form of income tax relief, and you've got GST cuts. So go out there and spend your money is the message from the Prime Minister, and of course also exhorting Indian industry to be self-reliant and asking consumers to consider Swadeshi. From all of us here at CNBC-TV18, thanks very much for watching. We will, of course, keep the news for you. We're coming up right after this short break.